So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and we return to what I'm going to say is definitely going to be the last time, to the old build. This is the public build, which everyone is free to download on ModDB, but this is going to be the last time that I show this particular version of the game. One way or another it will be anyway. Even if I have to leave gaps in my schedule beyond this point, I think I will do it, just to... I think this is going to be the best way to send it off, to be honest with you, just in terms of the map that it's on, the setup of the game itself. I think, you know, considering how long it's been that this has been the public build, albeit I haven't actually shown it that much in the past year or so, really, which goes to show how long this has been rumbling on for. But yes, this is the old version of THRANDUILS Halls. Of course, there is a completely revamped version of this map on the new version of the game. But I think it's either this or Bersergath, which was the map that I ended up showing probably the most in terms of repeats on my channel. So I think it makes a good amount of sense to return to this one to end this patch where it mostly began, I would suggest. But Thanatos is the one who sent this battle replay to me, but we'll go through the attacking armies first of all. I do believe it's good versus evil, evil versus the elder races as well. So we'll start off with the attackers, and Power Ranger over here playing as the Witch Realm of Angmar, certainly a invaluable member of any attacking force. We have to remember that this is the old version of the game, so some of the new bits and pieces that many of these factions do have access to are not going to be seen on this battle, but Angmar in this version of the game are still very much the same sort of faction as they are there, in the sense they're all about that heavy infantry, their survivability and their aggression. Sort of aggression through defense in a weird kind of way, and numbers. Gundabad Guard being heavy spears, I mean, they will struggle to get kills individually speaking, of course, the attackers here, because this is a 2v5, which obviously means the defenders are going to be vastly, vastly outnumbered. But they do have access to some good choke points, and they will, of course, have access to an extremely high quality advantage, you would assume. Gundabad Guard there, Blackwatch Legion, I mean, the mass pushing capabilities of Angmar should be on full display here, but based on the budgets that both sides should have access to, I would have a feeling that this is going to be a relatively small Angmar army. They've got some Angmar Marauders dotted around, some Guardians of Kharndoom, Witch Realm Pikemen, but they've got mostly their mid-tier units, and they have decided to invest in some higher tier units as well. I mean, this could be a good idea for some of the attacking armies to bring some quality, and Angmar's heavier units are a bit of a menace to anyone they face off against, but you know, numbers are the main thing in a 5v2 that the attackers can basically throw in willy-nilly, really, so I don't know whether that will necessarily prove to be a good idea in the long run. Another Angmar army under the command of WCAR-MR. Snaga Stalkers, much more of a expected pick given their numbers and their relative cheapness. Scourge Raiders, who are still throwing axemen in this version, and dismounted as well. Witch Realm Pikemen, Guardians of Kharndoom, full of armour upgrades as well as Witchers. I mean, looking at these compositions, I'm not entirely sure that the defenders have a chance, really, if the attackers have been given this much money individually. In all fairness, maybe some inexperienced players on the attack, so we'll see. I really hope this isn't a landslide. I mean, it would be an ironic way to send this patch off. Given the fact that Thanatos has been on at me to show this replay for quite a while, I do have some hopes for it being a decent one, so let's hope that I wasn't deceived in that respect. Mountain Uruk Host, which actually aren't in the Misty Mountains in the new version of the game, sort of a very similar version for Alexius here that the Isengard forces have with their Uruk Hai. Heavy Goblin Halberds are just in behind as well, very much the same sort of thing, only renamed in the new version. Just in behind that we have some Black Uruks, which in terms of the extra quality will be useful, especially given what the defenders will probably have access to in terms of their own units. Interesting to see the Heavy Goblin Archers alongside the Heavy Goblin Crossbows, but a bit of range pressure. I mean, it is an intimidating defensive position that the outer part of Thranduil's Halls has, so we'll see how these units get utilised. Some White Uruk Fearmongers, so some stronger Halberds, which in the new version of the game we saw will be useful against the Dwarves, and the Blackback Mountain Berserkers as well. Moving on to the fourth attacking army, we have Isengard. So speaking of Uruk-hai, Smeagol Has-a-Beard here is going to have access to them, and the Uruk-hai infantry are here in force. Good amount of baseline and mid-tier quality that Isengard have to offer does stand them in pretty good stead, usually from an attacking perspective against higher quality factions, 'cause it means they're not totally and hopelessly outgunned, but they still have a distinct numbers advantage. Uruk-hai Raiders do give them the extra numbers as well. The Isengard Ballista, which in this version of the game was one of the first unique artillery pieces, much more prevalent in the new version of the game, of course, but this particular artillery piece maintains itself for Isengard in the new version. Of course, it is worth saying that the trolls in this version of the game are significantly weaker, actually, so particularly against forces like the elves and the dwarves, I wouldn't expect the trolls of the White Hand to be quite so domineering as they could potentially be on the new version. Uruk-hai pikemen are always going to be a useful anchor. Nazkai and Uruk-hai crossbows for the support and the very high-end armor-piercing damage as well. This is an intimidating force, you have to say. And then adding into that, we have Hades over here, who is going to be playing as Rhun, adding in their own armor-piercing twist. So plenty of armor-piercing, which the dwarves will not be too pleased to see. Carmel's chosen the old version of them, the last time that we'll see them in this particular guise, but they've been given a significant visual upgrade, I think, in the new version anyway. Eastron Crossbowman, Variag Mercenaries, which are another unit which has disappeared really from the roster. More of a skirmishing archer that Rhun have access to, but you could argue they don't really need both them and the Nar Rim, so it was a little bit of redundancy, and unit slots in the game at this point are precious given the amount of factions involved. Dragon's Wrath crossbows with their unique ammunition, and then Eastron Warriors in here with Balkoff. I mean, more of a numbers-focused army this from Rhun, you'd have to say, which should help hammer home the attacker advantage. So, what will the defenders do against this seemingly overwhelming force? It's going to be Mirkwood and Khazad on the defence. Nawaki playing as Mirkwood with some armour upgraded Hiri Peng, a couple of units of them, 3 units maybe, good amount of damage, and also capable of mucking in melee. I mean, average quality should really not be a problem for the defenders here. They should be able to spend vast sums of money, and in many ways units like these Hiri Auth that are armour upgraded should be the rank and file and most basic units that Mirkwood have brought, and considering that's the case, from a pure melee perspective, quality is not going to be an issue. It's whether or not their front lines get overwhelmed and pushed out of the way, which can happen to the elves with their lower mass. Elven King's Palace Guard, seldom will you see a more well-rounded unit in the game, and that's been the case for a long time. Warns of Ammon Lank, of course, renamed now, but very much the same sort of unit in the new version still, in that they are a very strong archer at range, and then armor-piercing axeman in melee, setting up all of those stakes, but I don't think there's mounted units to worry about, so they will be for show only. Hiri Lang with some extra damage in melee, those two-handed swordsmen, and Woodland Protectors as well for some javelins. I mean, every arrow and javelin is going to need to find its way into a target and doing its best to kill them if they are hoping to be victorious here. Elders of the Elven King with their Silverthorn arrows also. Unsurprising to see them double dipping on bodyguard units considering the amount of money they must have access to here. So yeah, Elven King's Palace Guard. But even 2 of them are still relatively low in terms of numbers. And then Thanatos himself playing as the dwarves, of course, more rigid when it comes to their defensive abilities because of their heavy armour and their mass, but they're still not the most numerous faction in the world. They can probably field more units on average than a faction like Mirkwood, but it will be a close run thing. But they do cover for one another's weaknesses reasonably well, so it'll be interesting to see how they set up. The 1st Legion Pikes, very strong in melee, I mean armour piercing as well, so really, really powerful. They need to set themselves up in a very prime position really and start doing the business. Sons of the Fallen, a very strong unit of defensive spears. Whether they have the killing power or not against some of the better units for the attackers may make the difference. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Khazad Reclaimers with their strong throwing axe attacks. Interesting to see these 3rd Legion don't have an armour upgrade on them. I'd have thought that the dwarves would have had plenty of money to spare for such things. We have the Hammers of Gundabad back here as well, locked morale unit. Interestingly enough, a unit we haven't seen in the new version for a long time are the Iron Watch of Miramir, which are handheld mortars. I don't know whether that's because we haven't seen Khazad a whole lot, or whether they got removed, because they are a bit of a weird unit in this version of the game, but they're so strong that they could end up being the difference here for the defenders. If they set up in an ideal position, they can be every bit as damaging as the Witchers can. Maybe not as quickly, but over a long period of time they can cause huge amounts of devastation. Legion Bodyguard are here, Mithril Guard, so powerful armor-piercing attacks. Guards of Khazad. Actually, it was the armor-piercing attacks on Guards of Khazad, Mithril Guard, with their 3rd hit point. These 3rd Legion infantrymen do have the armour upgrade, so I guess that's a sign that Thanatos has managed to spend every gold piece that he's got. Sons of the Fallen, and then other units. A 2nd unit of Guards of Khazad, so certainly not guilty of wasting any slots on low quality units. More Hammers of Gundabad, so big armour piercing damage for the dwarves as well, which will be pretty much universally useful unless they're going up against the very lowliest Snaga or Eastrons. But I mean, there's no doubting the individual quality of some of these units. It'll be interesting to see if we do get a quality over quantity win on a map like this, because obviously many times in this version of the game in the past we've seen armies such as the one that lies before us be fairly domineering, stuff like the Witchers doing their thing, and they're in their stronger guys in this version of the game as well. So let's see, will the good ground, good defensive ground, and very, very strong quality of the defenders be enough in this situation? They will need to play perfectly, given the numbers discrepancy and the bits of quality the attackers do have. As for the attackers, do they just go all out and see if their numbers are enough, or do they try and take the slower approach? They may not be given the opportunity with the ranged power that in particular Mirkwood have, but we'll see. I'll make a cut and we'll rejoin when the first blows, or be they ranged or in melee, get struck. So the first move being made by the attackers is clearly they are going to be trying to coax the defenders into using some of their extremely valuable ammunition, considering the odds they're facing on units that certainly don't deserve it. Basic Eastron Hunters are the ones, but interestingly enough, based on how the attackers are setting up, they are going to be moving forward in waves, and they can afford to be a little bit blasé, I suppose, with some of their initial forces, just to soften the enemy up because of how significant the numbers discrepancy is, though on most occasions I would suggest coming forward in such clearly defined waves as this may not be the best plan. But Sons of the Fallen here going to be the ones that the Goblin Infantry face off against first, and very unsurprisingly the Goblin Infantry are going to do absolutely nothing against their age-old foe here. The Dwarves of Khazad easily able to hold the Misty Mountains Goblins at bay. Just one unit of them. I'd be very surprised if they didn't rout very, very quickly. Interesting to see Isengard also moving forward in support of the Misty Mountains early doors here. Rhun moving up the hill. This part of the defence on this map has always been the one most likely to break first, purely because there's more surface area that the defenders need to try and hold on to, but as we've already mentioned, the dwarves are very rigid in terms of their frontline presence, and you can see already some hits being landed. Some Eastron Hunters, but again from the front, shielded, very heavily armoured when they have their plate upgrade as well, the 3rd Legion Infantry, so unless it's crossbows, I don't think the dwarves will be too concerned about that, but the attackers definitely going about things in the right way in terms of trying to utilise their skirmishes to its fullest early days here. The infantry, on the other hand, is struggling just a little bit. The Goblin Infantry instead moving over, but they're going to be met this time by Elven Spears as opposed to Dwarven ones. Now in come the one unit of unupgraded 3rd Legion Infantry, and I'd be very surprised if the Goblins decided to stick around for much longer after this. Falling away pretty quickly and almost certainly getting not very many kills, although one dwarf did fall there, but comes in conjunction with the Goblins routing off. Sons of the Fallen moving in, going to try and kill off as many of them as they can before they leave, because a unit of this size will come back for more later, albeit with their hearts shaken, I'm sure. Uruk-hai Raiders in front of, again, the Eastron Hunters. Still plenty of attackers, of course, ready to make the push forwards. The Trolls are moving forward. Potentially here we've got the Isengard force, which is much more substantial than the one we just saw go through the middle with the Uruk-hai infantry and the Trolls, but of course this is the previous version Trolls, so they won't be quite so domineering. The 3rd Legion, with the extra attack that those axes afford them, should be able to bring them down fairly fast, especially if they have a little bit of support. But reinforcements from the dwarves, are they close enough by? Hammers of Gundabad are moving in, and they will make pretty quick work of the Trolls as they are here. And not only that, but that armour piercing will be greatly appreciated, I'm sure, against the heavier Uruk-hai infantry. Here come the Hammers now. Are they going to try and get away from the front line now, the Trolls? Perhaps. They don't have the staying power in this version of the game to be able to go toe-to-toe with this unit. Hammers of Gundabad, of course, being locked morale means they will stick around for the duration of their survival. I think the Hammers of Gundabad actually have gone through a minor model change in the next version of the game. I think the hammers have been made longer and thinner, a little bit more of a sort of realistic, quote-unquote, look to the weapons here. Here they look like giant mallets, which is all well and good. And this is something else we've seen on this map before as well. Another reason why this defence, or this position on the defence, is so tricky to hold on to, because the attackers can use artillery to good effect from across the river. And they could end up getting friendly fire as well, and indeed there we see it. That is a lot of kills on the dwarves as well, and I mean friendly fire is worth it pretty much all the time here for the attackers because of how big their numbers advantage truly is. But we did see in the last siege battle replay on the beach landing how artillery friendly fire can put you or land you in hot water pretty fast if you're not careful. Here come the Eastron clansmen, again just numbers here on the front line, trying to take advantage of the damage that the Isengard ballista has done, but it's fallen silent since then, so the Hammers of Gundabad still ready, and the dwarves still in a good defensive shape. We are moving forwards through main entrance here. We've got the Eastron clansmen, or the dwarven infantry there, standing there just menacingly for the time being, not thinking too much of the runic opposition that they look to be facing, although once again Rhun trying to make as efficient a use as possible of their Eastron hunters, which if you can make good use of a unit this cheap, especially given the situation as it is. And what are they going after? Yes, the unshielded unit of heavy elven swordsmen. You can see one of them did fall as well, and this is a sign they can't really allow this to continue, to be honest. They need to try and counter-attack perhaps. Over here, the Misty Mountains opening up another front. We've got the Sindar of the Girdle, now known as the Elder Pathfinders in the new version of the game, but Mountain Orc Coast moving forward, so some pretty hefty infantry units being committed forward by the attackers here. They may be in no rush to commit the full might of all of their armies all at once, but they're not just sending forward any old rubbish to try and soften the enemy up first. They are sending some decent troops forward, and the Mountain Orc Coast will lose, of course, against this level of elven quality, but they won't lose as hard as many of the entry-level goblins that the Misty Mountains usually traffic in. They are shaken though, these guys. They need some extra support, and the Mountain Orc Coast, the second unit of them, is on the way. The Hiriek and Hiri Lang, however, doing a good job at holding on for the time being. Sindar of the Girdle don't have the clearest position for a charge, but they should be able to make one land. The lances do come down, and that may be enough to break these forces. Sindar of the Girdle, of course, it's when to use them is always an interesting question for defensive cavalry, and if you do have an opportunity to get some good charges off, you need to take it, really, because there's no guarantee you'll be able to do it later, considering the vast force that lies before you. This has been a pretty good engagement from Mirkwood thus far, though. They will be happy with how the situation is developing. Defeats them certain. For the Mountain Uruks, meanwhile over here the dwarves did push forward and push away the Eastron clansmen very, very quickly, to the point where we didn't even see the battle take place, but still the most significant battle was taking place over here, and interestingly enough a complete collapse in the attack. Not enough quality, well, maybe not a complete one yet. The trolls are still alive, but they are plodding their way backwards. Oof. There's the Isengard ballista. Ooh, tragic losses of the Khazad reclaimers there, ripping its way through several units with those hefty projectiles. Snaga skirmishes on the way forward, and the dwarves counter-attacking into them. I mean, the Hammers of Gundabad fancying their chances. I mean, 1-to-1 against Uruk-hai infantry, they should be just fine. That is the Iron Watch, I believe. The shaking. Where are they? Not sure. I mean, they need to be a bit careful of friendly fire, but we did mention in the deployment phase how if the defenders are going to win, surely the Iron Watch are going to have to play a big part in it. Javelins flying overhead to try and do some damage to those hammers. Still that Isengard ballista getting into position. I mean, certainly one of the most dangerous units that the attackers have. Now, yeah, going after, again, it's the Iron Watch of Mirrormere being targeted down, but as long as they stay alive, at least half the unit, they'll still have the DPS required to do the business, really. And I don't know how much ammunition the Isengard Ballista has left. Probably not enough to snipe out the entirety of the Iron Watch. Over here, meanwhile, the elves managing to completely vanquish the infantry attack on this side as well. So the attackers are going to have to start from their beginnings once more. Good signs, perhaps, for the defenders, especially now the Sindar of the Girdle are free to charge in here and do some damage against these scattered, very low tier units, admittedly, but again, causing that Goblin infantry to rout. I don't know if they'll come back this time. Managing to go after these softer targets, however. Strong clansmen. Urukai infantry there as well. Starting to see a little bit more in terms of the defending archers getting involved and having a say. Hounds of Gundabad are going to lose. A task too much for them. They may very well finish off the trolls before they fall, but the sheer numbers of the Urukai infantry will prove to be too much on this occasion for them. Some Eastrons coming in here as well. And this unit would have routed by now if it didn't have locked morale. Trolls will still live as well. Downhill come, again, another depleted unit of the 3rd Legion, having already thrown off that initial attack, but I don't know if they've been efficient enough. They're going to need more, I would suggest. Isengard Ballista in there. 3rd Legion infantry doing the business. Victory. Orc Hunters don't have the best of angles, but they are going to have to try and do something. I mean, Eastron Hunters moving in to try and counter skirmish. The Snaga skirmishers, again, cheap javelins, always a potential pain for defenders because you need to do something about them. You can't allow them to get many kills. 3rd Legion infantry slowly moving downhill, but maybe going to find themselves cut off if they're not careful, but maybe they just want to, and they have managed to rout the Snaga skirmishers, so you'd have to say this has been a worthwhile endeavour. Would come more of the Isengard forces. Interesting that Isengard are taking the lead on many of the attacks early on, given the median level of quality they possess. They and the Misty Mountains and Rhun moving forward first and foremost. The Angmarim armies, potential danger later on with all of their high-end horrors. Nothing else moving over this way for now. Small matter of the Sindar of the Girdle getting in and amongst all of these units. Of course, the tree cover down here does make things difficult to see, so that can be a benefit and a hindrance to cavalry units. If you pay really close attention, the enemy may not notice what you're doing, that you have close control over one unit, but if you take your eye off the ball even for a moment, you can find yourself accidentally embroiled in spears or halberds or God knows what else. So Nawaki is going to have to be careful, but he's cycle charging in here against these, again, very low end units, but these are free kills and you need to start making real dents in the sheer numbers that the attackers have. Strong clansmen. Infantry routing again. I mean, you may as well keep cycle charging into the strong clansmen. Again, free kills essentially. They're not going to be able to do much damage in return, and you need to try and do some damage to the numbers. These strong clansmen have got a little bit more about them than the Goblin infantry as well, and these are really good broadside charges as well. Trolls will force them away for now, however, but they can bide their time and attack again, maybe. Again, these strong hunters moving forward, proving to be the death by 1,000 cut style unit that Rhun are trying to inflict upon the defenders. How much damage they're actually doing is anyone's guess, really. Hammers of Gundabad the target. I mean, they are unshielded, I suppose, but that armour will be enough to throw off very low damage archers for the most part, as we see here. Interesting that, I mean, it has sort of died off a little bit in terms of pace from the attackers. They are moving forward now. Plenty of goblins moving forward from the Misty Mountains now. Starting to see the first of the Angmar units on the way forwards. Also, Uruk-hai infantry getting ready to maybe reopen the central lane. Again, all the tree cover means that Rangers are hiding. I mean, this is the old version of the game, let's not forget. Rangers, body-piercing projectiles. Another very, very big potential benefit for defenders in this sort of situation if they can bottle the attackers up. So far, though, the attackers are the ones trying to leverage their archers a little bit more, soften the enemy up, even if they only get a handful of kills per archer. That's still worthwhile considering the relative cheapness. So they continue to fire away. Whatever happened to the Sindar? I think they retreated back. You can see here now Isengard with the Uruk-hai infantry did move forward, but immediately being met by a slightly lopsided formation of Sons of the Fallen, but the dwarves will be able to hold them at arm's length relatively easily. It seems certain. Only a military genii could win this battle. Iriak could move in as well. I mean, it would definitely bring about the routing of the Uruk-hai infantry just a little bit more quickly. Rhun moving forward with some slightly tougher archers now. I think ever so slightly more damaging than the Eastron hunters as well, but once again, trying to do their thing. Those look like body-piercing projectiles. That would be an interesting choice of unit to use them on. I mean, the Variag mercenaries are kind of designed to be a back-and-forth style archer. Still do huge amounts of damage with rangers, of course, but rangers could prove to be the difference here, so you want to be careful. Mirkwood still with these two units that relatively easily held the Misty Mountains at bay last time, and that was with slightly higher quality units, but maybe with superior numbers and a bit of backup from Angmar and their own crossbows, the Misty Mountains will have more luck this time. Guardians of Khan Doom, the ones that are moving forward first and foremost. Mercenaries ballooning a few shots into the enemy positions. Victory seems certain for the Sons of the Fallen. And the damage that they're capable of kicking out is more based on the fact that they can stay alive for so long that they're going to be able to take more attacks. And come the Elven King's Palace Guard. I mean, that is definitely a case of overmatching, considering the depleted nature of the Uruk-hai. They want to be a little bit careful, because I would imagine the Variag mercenaries will try and take this opportunity to score some point-blank hits on a unit this strong. But they're not going to have much more of an opportunity. Eastron hunters on the way forth as well. Out of ammunition, having already tried to do their bit, they're going to end up getting absolutely slaughtered by high-end Dwarven and Elven units in melee, especially when they don't have any sort of support. Certainly a token effort to try and keep this attack going. I'd be amazed if they got any kills at all, really, against a force like that. Still no real movement happening over here. Trying to balloon some shots over Variag mercenaries. I mean, you can see what the idea is. Send in the Eastron hunters to be the sacrificial lambs and try and get some kills with the arrows. They may end up with one or two, which, again, considering the margins, in the long run will probably prove to be worthwhile. The elves will absolutely dominate in melee there. Heavy Goblin Halberds are shaken already. Greenwood Rangers firing directly downhill into them. Again, is this the best use of their time and resources, especially seeing as crossbows are firing back at them? I mean, it's routing off these halberds, but they are fleeing. There's two units of halberds, in all fairness, that are now fleeing, and a third one is on the way forwards, moving very, very slowly, having to march through the quagmire. cave trolls moving up now, which will be enough to convince the Greenwood Rangers to leave. I mean, lots of damage done and not all of their ammunition expended, but a little bit of damage done in return. Again, they have to be near perfect, the defenders here, really, to be able to pull this one out of the bag. Over here, still the Sons of the Fallen and the Palace Guard, a really potent mix of a very damaging Elven unit and an extremely tough Dwarven defensive spear. And we are starting to see something which can at least not just fold in the face of them. The Uruk-hai infantry will at least put up a fight, but they're still hopelessly outclassed, really, in the one-to-one engagement. The units in behind, however, Variag mercenaries trying to counter skirmish with the Hiri Peng, but the fortifications on the edge of the cliff and just the terrain in general are going to make any hits difficult to land, and the Hiri Peng firing away into the backs of a newly renewed assault over here. Once again, Isengard over here, but joined by a few Angmar units, the Gundabad Guard and the Guardians of Kharndoom, again very adept defensively and numerous, so difficult to get rid of, but with Elven projectiles and a bit of Dwarven, well, a few Dwarven heavy hitters, it is certainly possible Hammers of Gundabad will do very well against most of what Angmar have to offer. Towards a mass pushing unit here, the Black Watch Legion, not particularly good in sustained fighting, especially given their cost, but for their niche they've always been an effective tool. Hammers will do a lot of damage to them as well, though, and Angmar not making the most progress, you must say. Guards of Khazad nearby, the Iron Watch of Mirrormere are going to start firing in by the looks of it. I mean, why not? It's a decent enough blob. Continuing to do the business there, although I had a ballista bolt whiz past. And there we go. Has a big psychological impact as well, the Iron Watch, when it hits enemy units, some of them already shaken, so a mass rout is definitely on the cards if they can continue to land good hits, and 2 units of Guards of Khazad joining the Hammers of Gundabad is a lot more armour-piercing punch on the front line as well, so the dwarves aren't pulling their punches here at all. Going to be able to do hefty damage. Snaga arrows still trying to arc over the Uruk-hai pikemen moving forward, so a new kind of threat for the defenders to have to deal with. If the pikes can get themselves situated, that is a problem, but immediately seeing the danger of the pikes, a nearby unit of Greenwood Rangers going to fire in, just like it did on the Heavy Goblin Halberds, to try and make quicker work of them, and they're already shaken. The defenders have played whack-a-mole pretty well here. And come the Sindar the Girl, they need to be very careful considering the amount of halberds in here, but clearly going for a charge on the Guardians of Kharndoom that are now leading the way. Probably should have been leading the way in the first place. They would have stood up a little bit better to the beating from the Rangers with their big shields and thick armour. But they're here now. The other unit of Elven King's Palace Guard has joined the Elven defence over here, though, so in terms of melee quality, it's still very much in the hands of the defenders. It's just a case of whether or not their armies can hold themselves together. And he's getting a nice little charge there into the side, the Guardians of Kharndoom, continuing to do so before the Halberdiers make up too much of the front line, you would suggest. But even then, they're shaken, so a good charge on them might convince them to flee. In here. Angmar Marauders now taking up the mantle on the front line after the Uruk-hai pikemen were soundly defeated as a result of the Ranger support. And I mean, you'd have to say that the Angmar Marauders probably aren't going to stick around for too long. This one unit of Sons of the Fallen has seen a lot of combat already, but not a huge amount of losses, and that's the sort of thing which will start to play on the minds of the attackers, I'm sure, if they don't start to kill off a few more units. Over here is where the attackers initially had some good success, good support from the ballista, managing to kill off a few more of the Dwarven defensive units as well, but again another armor-piercing unit in the 2nd Legion X-Guard, Guards of Khazad still in here, and none of these Orc units are going to be that efficient. Well, I guess the Orc fellas in their own weird kind of way. It's so cheap, and the armor piercing will at least give them a leg up on the dwarves, but
only half the enemy force remains.
Trolls of Gundabad making a nuisance of themselves. I don't think this is a unit that exists in the new version of the game, actually. Might be the last time we see them, because I think it's all been rolled into the Trolls of Angmar. They are going to get in and amongst the Orc Hunters of Khazad. Second Legion. It's a lot of armor piercing, isn't it? And that's exactly the sort of thing which Angmar don't like. I mean, Angmar, very well known for being extremely effective when they're on the attack because of their robust nature, but this is the sort of force which can stop them dead in their tracks, really. Although I've seen a few throwing axes fly overhead. The Scourge Raiders are there, the Uruk-hai crossbows, all of these supporting units. If you allow them to get any sort of traction, it could be a bit of a problem. This is a unit that will do quite well for Angmar in this situation, though, if they're supported properly. The Witch Realm Hammer Guard, big armor-piercing damage on those huge warhammers of theirs, and they are getting a bit of support coming in from the javelins and maybe from the crossbows soon as well, although immediately the Iron Watch of Mirami are also going to start doing that, but they need to be careful. Friendly fire is pretty much unacceptable for the defenders in a battle like this. Guardians of Khan Doom now moving forward to test out the Sons of the Fallen with a bit of arrow support as well. This could be the moment where this Dwarven Spear finally starts to falter, especially if they get surrounded by the Variag mercenaries running around the flank. There's a unit of 3rd Legion infantry here which would be able to surround the surround, if you will. That is exactly what Rhun are intent on doing, though, and more Uruk-hai pikemen being sent forward by Isengard. Of course, the extreme level of resources that the attackers have at their disposal means that for every victory the defenders have, they do have the knowledge that the attackers are always really going to have more in the tank. Variag mercenaries shaken up. Damage done. 3rd Legion infantry. Arrows crisscrossing all throughout the sky. Again, this largely Misty Mountains led attack completely thrown back by Mirkwood. Their quality in melee, as well as that support from the cavalry, has been pretty excellent. I mean, the use of the Sindar of the Girdle has been very, very good. There are heavy goblin halberds in here, and they weren't actually braced, which is good for the Sindar of the Girdle, because if they were, that would have been very, very painful for them indeed. They do manage to land the charge. The heavy goblin halberds are shaken, but I think they will manage to... Yeah, they do manage to keep themselves alive. The goblin trackers, I think, were the true target of that charge. Some damage done to both. I mean, goblin trackers and Variag mercenaries, there's a huge volume of arrow fire now coming forwards from the attackers. So they've changed tactic again, really. There's not really a clear patch of sky at all. Trying to do damage as much as they can. Little bits and pieces of damage here and there, while they are starting to make a little bit of progress. The Rangers starting to rip their way through these attacking forces once more. Dwarven infantry once again, but getting a little bit of support now from some Elven spears as well. Angmar, their defensive credentials being thoroughly tested here. Variag mercenaries trying to do their thing in behind enemy lines, but slaughtered by the Elven King's Palace Guard. That one unit of Sons of the Fallen did pull back, and they're still alive, amusingly enough. There's not a huge amount of attacking forces over on the other side of the river anymore, so they are starting to get close to the point where they don't have too much in the way of reinforcements that they can rely on endlessly. Hammers of Gundabad and Guards of Khazad still, even in this situation, which looks pretty grim for them, they are fighting Angmar to a standstill. Victory seems certain for them, but a bit of reinforcements, some stragglers. Gaps found in the Dwarven defence now that their units are perhaps a little bit more widespread. Elders of the Elven King using their Silverthorn arrows now. Eastron Warriors able to get pretty far up here. Of course, now been replaced by the Carnul's Immortals. Facing off against the Khazad Reclaimers. I mean, just the fact that the battle is starting to get a little bit more chaotic and gaps have been found can only be a good thing for the attackers. But they are going to need some more quality over here, otherwise units like the Reclaimers are more than capable of looking after themselves in melee. Eastron Warriors will need some help. I mean, there are trolls running around here somewhere. There they are. Only 3 of them remain though, and the Scourge Raiders getting into melee against the very depleted unit of Orc Hunters. Just the fact that these engagements are happening are a good thing for the attackers though. Hams of Gundabad. If they're going to move in, then they're going to have to do so fairly quickly. And these Dwarven Stragglers have kind of scuppered any attempts at the attackers gaining momentum over here. If they were able to get rid of these guys more quickly, then they would have been able to claim pretty much all of this territory over here, and this would have been a large defensive position to try and hold on to for the defenders. As it is though, the attackers are kind of scattered and strewn all over the place. Eastron Warriors shaken. Elders of the Elven King getting into melee. I mean, they'll make very quick work of Eastron Warriors, I'm sure. Trying to use Flaming Shot, which it's unlikely you're going to be able to do big damage, well, big morale damage to dwarves and elves in this kind of situation, but it looks striking. And I suppose trying to burn down the forest is very much in the attacker's MO here. Blackwatch Legion, the other mass pushing unit, but again being used a little bit more conventionally here by Power Ranger. I don't know how much progress they're necessarily going to make. Again, that one unit of Sons of the Fallen still standing. Some Mountain Orc Berserkers in here. They are locked morale, so they will stick around for a long period of time, but arrow fire is a real problem for them, of course. And that's one thing Mirkwood have plenty of. Eerie Peng, though, out of ammunition for them. Have to start earning their keep in melee. 3rd Legion continuing to do the business here against some of these orcs. Over here. And still the Cinder of the Girdle, still 19 of them as well. That's a decent number. Snaga fleeing. Getting caught on the edge of those halberds, though. That's certainly not what they'll want. The goblins and the Snaga flee. Ariag Mercs. Would come the Barrow Whites again. Maybe there was a case for saying the Barrow Whites should have been moved forward sooner. It would have kept the attacks going, if nothing else. You can see there in the distance as well. Hammers of Gundabad, or not Hammers of Gundabad, the Witchram Hammer Guard. It's a big force of attackers now. A veritable horde trying to punch their way through the middle of this defence. Eerie Peng. Do the defenders have the mass and the numbers to be able to stop this kind of march? If they do, they'll have a lot of hope going into the late game that they can actually go on to be victorious here. Woodland Protectors presumably out of ammunition. Mithril Guard also moving in alongside the Elven King's Palace Guard. Probably one of the strongest unit partnerships in terms of pure melee that you're likely to see with the offense-defense dynamic between the two. And with Rangers starting to fire away, I mean, this is an ideal situation for the Rangers, really. Such a massive blob. They're going to score plenty of hits. Presumably get tons and tons of kills. Over here, meanwhile, Balkoth Tribesmen, more strong clansmen, Rhun sending forward more of their rank and file. Greenwood Rangers, so I mean, they have managed to force the attackers back again. Despite the chaos that was being sown in behind enemy lines, they were able to tidy it up quickly enough before the attackers could make their way through the main front line as well, and as a result, the attackers are back to square one, really. Back to where they started. The Iron Watcher here. Greenwood Rangers starting to run out of ammunition, which the attackers will be pleased about. Going to have to try and do their thing in melee now. Decent defensively. And Nars Kai are in here, which one of the few units on the field today that will give some of those heavy dwarven units a good scare. Dull thud means I think the Iron Watch are doing their thing as well. More and more of the defending archers are running out of ammunition and going to have to earn their stripes up close instead. Victory seems certain for the Orc Hunters, trying to deal with some of the stragglers around the flank. Morale once again proving to be the defenders' friend. Forward come the Snow Trolls. A large force. I mean, it was a larger force, but those Rangers have already done the business. Snow Trolls, of course, look very different, look far better now. But this is the last time we'll see the OG Snow Troll model. The defeat still seems certain for the defenders, though, even with the huge damage the Rangers have done. A little bit more optimistic over on the other side, where the elites are. This unit 3rd Legion may be overextending itself away from the rest of the defensive line a little bit too much. Back over here, still the Sindar of the Girdle, not that many more losses either, and completely open crossbows. I mean, the crossbows could last samurai, those Sindar, as they move forwards. I think that's exactly what they're trying to do, but struggling to do so. Just having a look, I mean, the last big wave of attackers is now waiting on the river crossing itself. The rest of those units are all fleeing. So they no longer have limitless resources, the attackers. And they're still not really guaranteed of making any significant breakthrough here. Still those guards of Khazad taken losses now, of course, 29 of them remain, but they've been a real powerhouse of a unit over on this side. The most difficult position on the map to defend, as we've already mentioned. But that hefty armor-piercing damage they can deliver, along with their defensive prowess. We've seen a little bit more of the elves as time has passed as well. Elders of the Elven King, immediately attracting the attention of all sorts of skirmishers down through from the trees there. Arrows and javelins both. The javelins will be a bit of a problem. Kind of thing that might be a sign the Elders of the Elven King might need to retreat. Fight stronger another time. Orc Hunters, victory almost a certainty. The Witches, of course, will always be one of the great equalisers, though, and I don't think I mean, if the defenders have run their ammunition supply too dry, then the Witches, it's going to be a real problem. You need to try and deal with them without them getting a single hit off, really, especially in this version where they are even more effective than they currently are. Snow Trolls trying to bludgeon their way through the line. I mean, they are going up against the spear portion of the line more than anything, so that will be to their benefit. But with the weakened Trolls in this version, Barrow-wights on the front line now as well, still over 200 of them. It will take, one way or another, it'll take the defenders a while to get through them unless they can charge them with cavalry, although javelins are another good option. Continuing to do a good amount of damage. The Witchhound Blackguard are in there as well, so Angmar sending forward a huge amount of their strength.
Only half the enemy force remains.
Wood Rangers fighting off against the Naz Kai. The Iron Watch now in melee is a sign that they've used up all their ammunition. Was it used well? We'll have to wait and see until the endgame splash screen. They are technically a bodyguard unit in melee, but they are a little bit cumbersome there. They're really just a HP brick with heavy armour. And the Nazkai will be more than happy to open them up, I'm sure, with that armour-piercing damage of theirs. Dragonwrath Guildsman now. Again, for all of the supporting units that the attackers have brought forward, it's not been a dominating ranged performance. I mean, considering it's a 5v2, even in moments like this, you expect the momentum to really start to build in favour of the attackers, but that hasn't really happened at this point. Really just focusing down this one area. They're electing to not go this way. Is this the retreat? It looks like it. Gonna retreat to the halls. Gonna leave a rear guard, I would presume. I mean, the gateway into the halls is a very good defensive position. It allows the defenders to consolidate rather than having to try and guard 3 avenues, and part of the problem is they can't afford to keep infantry over here doing nothing. They need all of their units in the fight at once, really, and that's why you're going to see a lot of these units now start to flee back to the halls. So what damage will the rear guard be able to do? I mean, a unit of Hiriak sway the Black Uruks of the mountains now arriving as well. There with the Greenwood Rangers. Flaming arrows arcing overhead. I mean, can they save anything from over here? They can save any guards of Khazad. That's something that's very much worth doing. Those Elders of the Elven King have definitely been focused down pretty effectively by the attackers. All bloodied, only 11 of them remain. They still have ammunition as well, so it's a sign that that was done relatively swiftly. Finally, though, from an attacker perspective, they will be able to claim large amounts of territory. It may well have been ceded to them by the defenders, but they'll be all too happy to finally start marching forwards towards the halls themselves. Hammers of Gundabad, pretty much an ideal rearguard unit, really, because they're going to do damage as they go down swinging, and locked morale means that you won't be able to break them so that you can get through them a little bit quicker. Urukai crossbows fighting away. So they've got their... Effectively, they use their crossbows with a bayonet on in the new version. Gives them a little bit of something unique. Did use another unit of Greenwood Rangers to try and build on the rear guard they had, just to buy them a little bit more time, but I don't know how much time that has actually won them, and it might have been worthwhile to just try and save these Rangers so you've got as many units as possible late on. I mean, there is high crossbows. There's a lot of blue and green arrows over here. Elders of the Elven King still fighting. The rest of these units, yeah, they're all routing the rest of them. Trying to skulk around unnoticed here, the Elders. Unfortunately for them, their projectiles are quite obvious, the Silverthorns. So, I mean, the attackers should be able to trace them back to the source relatively easily as they start to swamp forwards, trying to shoot the guards of Khazad as they continue their retreat. Many of those arrows missing, even the ones that hit, of course. That armour will do much of the work to make them survive. The Black Uruks march forward. I mean, another good opportunity for the cavalry, actually. I was wondering if they were still alive. 12 of them, so starting to look a little bit battered and bruised, but they've certainly been a worthwhile addition to the defensive ranks. Any extra charges they can get as the attacking army marches across the open field will, of course, be very welcome. I think for this moment we will go up to ×2 speed, at least temporarily. Sindar will be moving back, and they do have potentially the opportunity to get some charges off here. Goblin trackers. Yeah, and a depleted unit of Goblin trackers, so they're going to rout and they won't be coming back, so another good catch. Just trying to get as many of those as possible, really. Some of these stragglers that have been left behind. I mean, Snagar archers, cycle charging into them will result in them fleeing as well, even if they're out of ammunition, just trying to get rid of as many of the numbers that the attackers still have. Something that the Sindar have been very, very good at. If anything, actually, it's probably been the single most effective unit on the field in terms of how they've been used. Maybe the Rangers or the Iron Watch have managed to acquire more kills, but there's a degree of difficulty to utilising the cavalry. And it's been done reasonably well. Still the small matter of the Witches somewhere. Again, on a map with dense tree cover like this, it can be difficult to actually pick them out. Are looming menacingly. Again, Legion's 2 speed, I think, is probably the call. I think the attackers will wait, honestly, and stack up until they have their full force. Guards of Khazad. And just having a look at what they have within the halls. First Legion Pikes still completely healthy. Sons of the Fallen as well. Ethereal Guard. Legion Bodyguard haven't seen combat yet. The weakest of Khazad bodyguard units, but that's hardly an insult. Plenty of these elves as well, still with a bit of ammunition maybe. If those Greenwood Rangers still have ammunition, that could be a real game-defining thing. Much of the attacking army is still waiting way back here. Sindar of the Girdle still charging in. Still feasting upon some of these lowliest units of the attackers, but any kills are good kills at this stage in proceedings. Still quite a long way left in this battle to go, which is surprising, considering there's only really one defensive position left for the defenders. Again, another charge. Yeah, not surprisingly, one of the units of Snaga archers that are hero routing. I'm surprised they didn't try and run these guys forwards when they saw this was happening, but it's a bit late for that now. Again, that's quite a lot. That was, between the 2 units of Snaga and the Goblin Trackers, that was pretty much 200 units. They may be very, very weak and not up to much in melee, but still, 200. When it comes to sheer mass, that is the sort of thing that can make a massive difference. Goblin crossbows trying to fire away. I mean, this is technically an opening after all. The gate itself doesn't actually exist as such. They're trying to shoot this the woodland protectors, the officers, or one of the officers and the banner carrier, simply being left there, not leaving anything to chance. Pikes, I mean, Uruk-hai pikes. The fact that the defenders still have First Legion is a sign that well, I mean, I think technically speaking, the rocks above you can get archers through it, or arrows through it, but you can see that this is a real cliff, and all of these arrows are not finding their marks. And then, yeah, safe and sound, all cozy. Dwarves and elves defending Thranduil's throne, which, yes indeed, is back over here. This asset's still being used in the new version of Thranduil's halls, of course, which is far more extensive, both outside and inside, although there are still some similarities. Like, they've still got these like square areas inside that the attackers have to pass through. Might even be a moment for times 6 speed here, based on the stacking up time for the attackers. Kind of wondering why as well, because I mean, there's not really anything in the way. The Barrow Whites are still just hanging around back there. Still a few units there are the Witchers. I don't know if they're going to have the room to necessarily do the business. Eastron Rangers, or Eastron Warriors. And finally, the final battle will begin. So far, I mean, usually what we'll see on Thranduil's halls on the opening, or any battle like this really, is they'll let the attackers in just enough so that they can surround them, and then also they'll have better angles of fire for their supporting units, however many of them they may have. Second unit of Elders of the Elven King, of course, double dipping on those bodyguard units was always going to be extremely likely given the funds that both of the defending armies surely must have had access to. Seems certain. I mean, trying to go for the full-blooded mass-pushing approach, which is what they should be doing, really, the attackers, given the numbers that they have. Of course, it could all go a bit pear-shaped for them if morale starts to fall apart as a result, but I'll have to wait and see on that one. Victory almost a certainty. For now, for the defenders. This is where the armour piercing on these First Legion pikes will really come into its own. The Mithril Guard rejoining combat, as will the Legion bodyguard now, so more quality being added to the mix. The elves getting involved also with a unit of Hiriek. Some Hiri land could be committed as well. I mean, the dwarves are definitely the muscle in this final defence. The elves, more of a supporting factor, really. Which again is not really all that surprising. It's exactly the sort of setup you would have expected. Woodland Protectors, not the best melee combatants in the grand scheme of things in terms of dealing damage, but everyone is going to have to play their part here in the late game.
The enemy are badly blooded. They have lost half their men.
Indeed. Victory. A distinct possibility. Legion Bodyguard wrapping around to be on the part, cover the part of the line that the Mithril Guard aren't, so that they can spread out as much of this dwarven quality as they possibly can. Balin is with the Legion Bodyguard as well, so the Dwarven General is now bloodying his weapons. Does that mean Thranduil's in this unit? I think so. I think I can see him. There we go. Fighting very much on home turf for his own throne. With Rangers, do they have the angle of fire here? Because they could prove to be the most important unit the defenders still have left, given the retention of that, of those body-piercing projectiles of theirs. A couple of volleys from the Hiri Peng as well would probably not go amiss. More pikes now arriving on the front line. The Witchron pikemen with those trident-esque pikes of theirs, and then you've got the more hooked pikes of the Uruk-hai. They're going to struggle to get themselves situated. I mean, the White Uruks of the White Uruk Fearmongers came in and struggled to do that. There goes the Isengard General, the first general to fall, actually. But attacker general losses are going to be more significant because it means that the morale is going to fall apart more quickly, and that's the sort of thing which we have seen help the defenders already in this battle. Will they be able to utilise that again? Irilan, Rumoured Rangers as well. Irilan biding their time. Of course, you do want to have something extra that you can commit forward later if need be. There you can see the Carmel's Chosen revealing themselves as well. Still those First Legion pikes pretty dominant so far. They were of course allowed to set themselves. The attacker pikes have not had the same good fortune, and in conjunction with the Mithril Guard, they are mulching their way through the attackers as they try to push forwards. Second unit of Witchron pikemen will try and situate themselves so the attackers have some sort of anchor. Witchron Blackguard are in there, and they will be able to fight toe to toe better with some of these defensive units than many of the others, but they're backs to the wall here really for the attackers. Defeat a distinct possibility. Still trying to poke and prod at them with some of those ranged units. I wonder if that other unit of Elders of the Elven King has ammunition as well. More Silverthorn arrows, the sort of thing which certainly wouldn't go amiss. But so far, stars of the show in this final stage are the quality Dwarven units. Not able to make too much of an impression on their hefty defence, and not able to withstand their attacks either, the attackers so far. Not too much left of the Blackguard, I would have imagined. 37, that's not bad, considering the kind of combat they've already seen. Rejoining the fight of the Woodland Protectors, just to make sure of things. They're going to need to send forward more here, clearly, the attackers. Out here in the open field, still units routing. Sindar, is this? Where are the Sindar? Have they gone? Have they been defeated? Possibly. Not a huge amount left really for the attackers, is there? Looking at all of this. In fact, they may be getting pushed. Well, they still have a bit more left yet, but they're not able to utilise their supporting units as easily from this position either, is the problem. Balkoth Tribesmen are trying, as are the Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen, something that Rhun has been pretty good at throughout this entire battle so far, but they're going to need to try and clear more of a space inside the gates if they're going to utilise those units to their fullest, and unfortunately that is not the sort of thing which seems to be happening for them at the moment. Another unit of Woodland Protectors is being sent forward to make sure that mass is not a problem. Well, they still have javelins actually. Javelin to javelin combat. Usually not the sort of thing which the elves would like to get involved in. But they might make an exception here. Wardens of Amon Lank as well, another unit which we haven't seen up until this point really. Those axes offering yet more of that delectable armour piercing damage. What was that? Elders of the Elven King, I would assume. Harry Pang in a good position. Another unit Palace Guard, that's a lot of quality. A lot of quality that the defenders still have, and the attackers with no longer having limitless numbers. We might see a defender victory after all here. On a temporary basis though, at least we will go up to ×2 speed given the nature of this fight now. The only thing we can really see is everything of note that's happening in the battle as a whole is now happening within the frame as we see it. Repositioning themselves now though. Both the Dwarven Bodyguard units are the only ones left still. What do you do in this situation if you're the attackers? Because you know that any sort of numbers advantage you had is slowly ebbing away. Maybe not so slowly anymore either. First Legion. Hovering still, and not a huge amount of damage has been done to them. Still very healthy indeed. Pulling back, I think they kind of know that they don't want to... Excuse me. Choked on something there. Ugh. Anyway. Carmel's Chosen now moving forwards. Woodland Protectors. Good opportunity to use javelins here, side-swiping. Closing in on the final 10,000 frames, and the margins very much in favour of the defenders so far, but of course we've seen that in the past, and that can... the tables on that can turn pretty quickly. Mountain Berserkers. Silverthorn arrows raining down on the attackers from on high now. And again, they've got some good quality units in here now, bodyguard tier, but numbers are what the attackers need to try and really put this defence under the cosh. Now, confirmation of the final 10k frames. Moving forward again with the Woodland Protectors and other Elven Spears, just to make sure any sort of rapid mass push can be counteracted with numbers of their own. I mean, the defenders, based on the quality they have, the position they have, should go on to win this, which, for a 5v2, is an impressive thing. The access to those body-piercing projectiles from ranges, of course, certainly a big help. The quality, the defensive positions, this is a map that does favour the defenders as long as you build your lines well and know when to retreat, which the defenders certainly did here. One of the reasons I think why it was so popular way back when, the defenders, it's really got a sort of dig in, fortified kind of feel to it. I have to say they've played it quite well. Rangers. Still the Wardens of Amon Lank as well, all of these supporting units. Rhun once again trying to counteract this. Balkoth Tribesmen and Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen finding a bit of a gap. There goes the second general. The Misty Mountains won this time. I don't think the Misty Mountains have that much left other than the Blackbacks anyway, so I don't think the morale drop is going to prove to be all that debilitating, but we'll see. It could do. Javelins being utilised. Still with Ranger ammunition as well, but not with the clearest of shots. Legion bodyguards starting to take a few more losses. Do they have it in them to survive until the very end here? Trying to run through the first Legion pikes, which, yeah, trying to push through them in terms of mass is probably the sort of thing which should have been happening a little bit sooner from an attacker perspective. Rhun trying to make that happen with some non-ideal units, but still. Seeing that this is happening now, Eerie Land being committed, heavy Elven swordsmen, they'll of course rip and tear their way through the tribesmen, maybe less so against the guildsmen, given their higher defense. Projectiles, Loknar Rim, there's the Eastron crossbows as well. I mean, crossbows, a few volleys from them could be devastating, but they just don't have the room to be able to utilise them. Those Silver Thorns raining down from on high.
Our men have fought long and are becoming tired. For the moment the fortune of battle goes our way. Let's pray it remains as such.
Runic player admitting defeat. It's a bit of a shame. Got a lot of players admitting defeat now. Is that the end? It looks like it could be the end. So why then is there still so long left in the battle? It's a bit of a puzzling one. Maybe it's just going to be a case of trying to hunt down random fleeing units as they try to kite the defenders for no real reason. Tran Blackguard, give them their dues. They've fought well. They will be overrun ultimately. The power of a good defensive position. It is enough to make a big difference. Sindar of the Girdle. How many of them are left? Only 2. They will continue to pad their kill counts now on all of these fleeing troops after the admissions of defeat. So what still remains? It's got to be some random unit skulking around in the trees, right? We may as well go up to ×2 speed now, because I mean this is a bit of a strange ending, but the battle as a whole was actually very good. And a sign of what you can do as the defenders when you choose the right positions to defend in, provided the map actually provides them for you. Also, this is a defending map which really limits the ability of the attackers across the whole of it anyway to really use their own ranged units to bully defenders. The only exception really is over here where you've got the artillery on one side, and then you can use javelins and archers a little bit more easily over there, but for the most part the defenders are given the privilege of being able to dictate the ranged game, and that's always going to be a really big deal.
After them, cut the cowards down.
In fact, this may as well be ×6 speed at this point, so it really is just a case of breaking out. Ah yes, here we are. Oh, actually no, ×6 speed may not be the most appropriate here. What remains of Power Rangers army, including the Witchround Blackguard and the Barrow Wights, a few pikes as well. Certainly not enough to face the sheer might of what the defenders still have available to them. Those Barrow Wights will take a little while to finish off though. You can see why there was an admission of defeat, to be fair. I mean, it would have been nice to see them fight to the bitter end, but ultimately this is the situation. Barrow-wights will definitely be the last ones left standing. I mean, even though the Pikes have got that formation and the Blackguard overall are the more powerful unit, the Barrow-wights being that melee target means they will remain just a little longer. Trump Pikeman routing, running away now. The Hammer Guard still alive as well. A few bodyguard units. Again, this wouldn't have been enough to make the difference because they were all at least partially injured anyway. You know, Barrow-wights, again, like mass was really what the attackers needed in the late game to try and force their way through Thranduil's Hall's gate. And Barrow-wights are notorious for having basically no mass. They are a very specific kind of unit. No witches either utilised, unless they're skulking around here somewhere. But that's probably a good thing. The witches, of course, ever the unit that everybody loves to hate. You could say that about Angmar as a whole, really. Why not? Times 6 speed, Barrow-wights.
If we continue like this, we will smash the enemy.
It's just a case of slowly wearing them down. I think there are more elves left than dwarves, but I think, you know, that's more supporting units in the late game from the elves, whereas the dwarves right up until the end really were all about that frontline presence. You're always going to take more casualties in that kind of situation. You can see actually the lack of mass from the Barrow-wights here because they're being pushed back. I mean, I know they're outnumbered a lot, but they're being pushed back without any sort of push really being enacted upon them. So you say. Big margin of victory as well. By the time this is finished, it'll probably be about 25%. But again, admissions of defeat late on probably would have been closer to 20 had they fought to the bitter end. The dwarves just trying to bludgeon their way through the Barrow-wights now as they continue to get forced back. Does go to show the ability of the Barrow-wights to take a lot of punishment though, because any other unit really would have been like crushed underfoot within 500 frames, but they are standing and fighting. I'd say courageous, but I don't really think that phantoms such as they have that distinction. But there we have it. A good, you know, very comprehensive really defender victory. Goes to show what is possible. Heroic victory. And yeah, I think this does go to show that what the defenders are capable of. I mean, yes, a couple of the very important tools that they had available to them in the body-piercing projectiles from the Rangers from Mirkwood and the handheld mortars of the Iron Watch, we don't see really in the new version of the game, but similar sort of things can be applied in terms of how the defenders can do well in this sort of situation. Again, the map does play a role in that. You know, I think, you know, maps where the attackers are able to really utilise their own supporting units in a dominating fashion makes it really, really hard for defenders. It would be impossible in a 2v5, but we've seen 3v5s as well in the past where that's also the case. But yeah, I think it was a good way to sign off this old version of the game, I think, and also this old map, which we won't be seeing anymore really. Like I said, this one and Bersergath we saw the most in this version of the game, but Bersergath we may see again at some point in the future because it doesn't really have a replacement, whereas Thranduil's Halls has been updated. So we'll be seeing that one from here on out, when this is the last time we'll see this variant of it. But yeah, let's see what did the damage for Thanatos' army. Obviously huge kills across the board given the huge numbers discrepancy between the two sides. Those guards of Khazad, two very different fates actually for them, considering they were in kind of the same engagement. But the one that lasted longer, presumably getting 624 kills in melee. 2 units of Iron Watch, you know, big kills on them as well, 417 and 517 respectively. I mean, what did the worst here? What was the second Legion Axguard with only 34? That was when that front line started to fall away, to be fair. And 63 on the Khazad Reclaimers, most of which I think were in melee. So that was one thing the attackers did manage to shut down, but you know, the sheer might of the Dwarven infantry was definitely on display here. And also Mirkwood, you know, their finesse with their cavalry and the damage they were able to do with their archers, very apparent. So both defending factions really showcasing what their primary strengths are. as far as the attackers go, I mean, maybe, you know, trying to go a little bit more aggressive early on rather than attacking in waves may have been the answer. But yeah, it is what it is. And ultimately, I think that the battle worked out quite well the way that it did in terms of the sheer spectacle of it. So yeah, big thank you to Thanatos for sending this one in. I know that he's been on at me to try and do this one for quite a while. And ultimately, you know, old patch stuff kept getting pushed back because, you know, I want to do new patch stuff, especially as we go through the tournaments, as we get ever closer to full release and all of that. But I do want to do this one now because it's a good way, I think, to sign off on the old version, which has been around for admittedly far too long at this point, but it's treated us well. So there we have it. Big thank you to Thanatos once again. Big thank you to all the players that were a part of this battle replay. Big thank you to the old version of the game as well. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.